There are 95 achievements in Minecraft. Completing some of them requires hundreds of hours of gameplay. In this video, I'll try to complete as many of them as possible in hardcore mode, but every time I achieve one, my world expands by one block. As you can see at the start of the game, right after spawning, I was inside a 1x1 border. Underneath me there was a chest with starter items. After collecting the items, I realized I needed to mine some stone to complete the first achievement. When I went up, I noticed some grass, which I destroyed. And I was really surprised, because the first time I broke it, I got a seed. Next, I made a stone pickaxe to expand my area, and a hoe to plant the seed and complete another achievement. In the meantime, I gathered some wood and planted new saplings. At this point, things started to get really tough. I had to go deep underground to mine some iron. On the way, I also mined quite a bit of coal, but eventually I ran into my very first obstacle, silverfish. So I went back up, crafted a better sword, and in the process fought a dangerous enderman and almost died. The upside is that I earned another achievement, Monster Hunter. I returned once again to the mine and managed to locate a source of water, which I desperately needed to grow wheat so I wouldn't starve. There was just one problem. I needed a bucket to collect it. So I went back up, made a new pickaxe, and when I was heading back down, I got an unpleasant surprise. I decided to keep digging and finally found a hidden cave. But it wasn't quite what I had originally imagined it would be. At that moment, I realized I wouldn't be able to get down there, so I went higher up to dig, hoping to find some iron. Unfortunately, I had no luck, and to make matters worse, at one point I was surprised by a skeleton. After fighting it, I was left with only 1.5 hearts, and I only had one piece of bread. And that's when I realized I had made my biggest mistake. I hadn't lit up the way down to the mine. Unfortunately, it was already too late, but at least I managed to get the achievement for shooting a bow. My situation looked terrible, but I didn't give up. Unfortunately, in the meantime, more mobs started spawning down below. However, I realized it was daytime, so the monsters were burning. That's why I started digging everything up. Unfortunately for me, night had just fallen. So I decided to wait until morning. At night, while I was chopping trees, I managed to get an apple, which honestly didn't help me much. The next day, the mobs finally started burning, and I was finally able to deal with them. After lighting everything up, I decided to go back to digging to find iron. Unfortunately, without success, and on top of that, I was attacked by a plague of silverfish. The very next day, I went back down into the dark cave again to look for more iron. It was really a long and terrible ordeal, but in the end, I finally managed to get some iron. Unfortunately, only one piece. I went back up and smelted it in the furnace, earning an achievement in the process. On the fourth day, I decided to go deeper, and thanks to that, I managed to find a large iron deposit. After that, I smelted all of it and carefully crafted a bucket along with iron boots to finally complete the achievement for an iron armor piece. Then, I went back down again to collect some water and slowly started building a farm. I decided to spend the entire next day AFK so that my wheat would grow. On the sixth day, I descended deep into the cave and I almost lost my entire world. After carefully considering my options, I decided to go searching for diamonds, and also for iron along the way. On the way, I found a few caves, but I preferred not to venture into them because there were dangerous hostile creatures lurking everywhere. On the seventh day, I dug into a cave that was close to bedrock and managed to find 2 precious blocks of diamond ore and a large lava pool, which allowed me to complete another achievement. Quite interestingly, as I was heading back up, I accidentally found even more diamonds. The next day, I decided to eliminate several dangerous monsters and light up the cave so I wouldn't die because of them later on. Then I went back up and crafted a sturdy shield so I could use it later and successfully unlock the specific achievement. I went back down again because I really needed to find some iron for a new pickaxe so I could finally mine those diamonds. I headed back up to the surface, smelted the raw iron, and crafted a pickaxe, which earned me a nice achievement, and I even had to get rid of 2 phantoms in the process. After that, I sorted out some basic things on the surface and returned to the cave to mine the diamonds, which also got me another achievement. When I was heading back up, I came across a cave where there was another water source that I needed to make a proper infinite water source. Unfortunately, as you can see, the cave was also full of monsters that I had to deal with. The upside is that I earned an achievement by using a shield. After everything, I collected the water and headed back up. Right at the very top, I built an infinite water source and crafted a diamond pickaxe along with diamond boots, for which I received a special achievement. Thanks to that new diamond pickaxe, I went to mine some obsidian in order to complete 2 more achievements, entering the nether and simply obtaining that dark black stone. Then on the 9th day, I remembered the achievement for fishing, so I crafted a fishing rod and successfully completed it. Next, I built a portal and entered the nether, for which I also received an achievement. I spawned right in a fortress and started looking for a dangerous blaze spawner. When I managed to find it, I felt a sudden surge of fear that I might die, so I decided to return safely to the overworld. I took care of a few things, and the next day I returned to the nether. I killed a few blazes, which allowed me to complete another small achievement. Along the way, I managed to find a piglin, so I went back for some gold so I could trade with him. The entire next day was spent searching for gold in the Nether and trading with the piglins. Thanks to those trades, I finally earned the achievement for obtaining Crying Obsidian. One piglin also dropped a water bottle for me, which was extremely useful because there was no sand in my immediate area to make glass. On the 12th day, I organized my storage chest and brewed a potion to unlock yet another achievement. I then spent the next 2 full days searching for netherite, which I needed to complete 2 more achievements. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to locate what I was looking for, but I did manage to kill a ghast with its very own fireball, which earned me a special achievement. On the 15th day, I spent my time managing several different tasks on the surface, crafted a bed, and went to sleep, earning yet another achievement. The 16th, 17th, and 18th days were all spent battling against hostile mobs deep in the caves so I could finally light everything up. At one point, this episode could have basically ended right there, because I was left with only half a heart. However, when I was up on the surface, I was incredibly close to catching my very first prize cow. The 19th day started off with some very strange things. A villager came to me with 2 llamas. I immediately realized that if I found some rare emeralds and traded with him, I would finally complete a special achievement. So I quickly built him a secure pen so he wouldn't run away. I spent the next 2 full days searching for iron so I could finally make a complete set of iron armor. On the 22nd day, I expanded the farm because I still had a very big problem with food, and I started coming up with some detailed plans to build a proper house. Then for 2 whole days after that, I tried to find netherite, but I was still without any success. On the 25th day, I finally decided to go for another achievement, which required me to fall all the way from the 320th block down to minus 64, and somehow survive the entire fall. So once everything was finally ready, I took a leap and landed softly in the water I had placed earlier, thus successfully completing the achievement. On the 26th day, I carefully analyzed all the achievements I was able to complete and managed to accomplish one of them, which involved applying a bright glow effect to the text on a wooden sign. The very next day, I decided to complete an achievement that simply required shooting a loaded crossbow into the distance. Later that same day, I also headed deep down into a dark cave to find some redstone. I really needed this material to complete a specific achievement that required me to craft a target block, and then hit its very center with an arrow from a distance of at least 30 meters, or in other words, 30 full blocks away. Interestingly, this achievement was considered one of the hardest in Minecraft, but unfortunately I didn't know that, and ended up wasting 2 whole days trying to complete it. On the screen you can now see my best attempt, which, let's be honest, was still far from actually completing this achievement. The next day, I finally decided to go to the Nether to find netherite. I mined for 3 whole days, but I finally managed to find it. Unfortunately, I lost 1 piece of netherite to lava because of my mistake, but I still managed to complete the achievement. For the next 2 days, I was basically AFK by the border, hoping that a cow would come up to me. And finally, it happened. Of course, I immediately built a pen around her so she wouldn't escape. Unfortunately, I still needed 1 more cow to complete the achievement for breeding animals. And by the way, somehow on the same day, my villager with 2 llamas disappeared. I dedicated the 35th day to preparing materials for my house and leveling the ground. The next 2 whole days were spent building a modest house. Unfortunately, I couldn't make windows because I didn't have any sand, but in my opinion, it still looks great overall. By the way, you can write in the comments what you think about it. On the 38th day, I decided to completely rebuild my farm. On the 39th day, I started building a modest storage room under my house. After moving all of my various items and decorating the immediate surroundings, I realized that, in theory, I could still complete a few more achievements. One of these specific tasks involved placing a lodestone block in the nether and clicking on it with a compass. There was just one problem, because I needed 1 netherite ingot, which meant I still had to find 2 more ancient debris in the nether, but it was doable, so I immediately set out to start mining. On the 43rd day, I finally found those 2 ancient debris. After crafting the lodestone, I returned once again to the nether, and successfully finished the challenge. That same day, I also constructed a makeshift path back home. The following days passed with me just standing AFK by the border, waiting for a cow to come to me. On the 46th day, I came back to my computer and was really surprised, because it turned out that a cow had come onto my land. Thanks to her help, I was finally able to complete the difficult achievement for breeding animals. On the 47th day, I suddenly noticed a wild wolf wandering near my border, and I really needed it to complete the specific achievement that required taming any animal in Minecraft. I tried all sorts of different ways to get it to come closer to me, but unfortunately, I was without any success. I decided to spend the last 2 full days shooting at the target, hoping that I would eventually manage to hit the very center and complete the achievement. Unfortunately, according to the game, I did not quite manage to do it. Even though 1 arrow very clearly struck the center point,